Welcome back, everyone. We're switching gears today, hitting the dirt roads, for a closer look at a legendary race, the East African Safari Classic Rally.
This is a good one. It's a rally unlike any other, that's for sure.
Our listeners got their sights set on the 2025 rally and wants to know, well, what are the rules of the game? What are they getting themselves into?
And they've come to the right place because we've got the Supplementary Regulations 2025 document.
It's our roadmap for this deep dive.
And it's not just, a dry list of rules.
Yeah.
It really paints a picture of just how massive and challenging this event really is. Just to give you an idea, the total distance is about 4,000 kilometers.
Whoa, 4,000 kilometers. That's more than twice the length of Route 66. And it's all packed into 9 days, including a rest day, starting and ending in Mombasa.
And get this, only about half of that is competitive stages.
So 2,200 kilometers of flat-out racing.
Through some of the most demanding terrain you can imagine.
Okay, so we've got epic distances, punishing conditions. You think they might ease up a little on the rules, right?
You'd think. But honestly, the regulations really highlight how meticulously organized this rally is.
Yeah.
There's a huge emphasis on safety and fairness. Everything's got to be by the book.
And speaking of fairness, the first thing I flipped to was Appendix 6, the penalty section.
Oh, yes.
It's like a crash course in what not to do.
It really gives you a sense of all the potential pitfalls waiting to trap an unwary driver.
So imagine you're a driver, right? You're gearing up for this rally. You've got your classic car all tuned up, ready to go. But how do you even plan your strategy when the regulations specifically ban reconnaissance?
That's the real test of a seasoned rally driver right there.
Yeah.
Relying on experience, intuition, and adaptability.
Yeah.
It's not just about speed, it's about navigation skills, strategy, reading the terrain.
And speaking of strategy, Certus is crucial in a rally like this.
Yeah.
But even that's tightly regulated.
Oh,
But
yeah, absolutely.
Wow.
You have designated service areas, strict time limits.
2 hours at the end of each day.
Yeah.
And 5 precious hours on the rest day.
That's all you get
Yeah.
to keep those cars running.
And speaking of service, the regulations get really specific about service vehicles. There's a service vehicle, a management vehicle, and an optional auxiliary vehicle.
Yeah, and each one has a specific role.
The management vehicle is interesting to me. It can carry spare parts,
Right.
but they all have to fit within a box, measuring exactly 0.125 cubic meters.
Can you picture that?
It's like rally Tetris, trying to cram in all the essential spares into that tiny little space.
It really speaks to the ingenuity that these teams need to have throughout the rally.
You know, it's easy to get caught up in the cars and the rules, but we can't forget about the human element.
Right. At the end of the day, it's people behind the wheel.
Right.
And I think the regulations reflect that. There's a real emphasis on sportsmanship and fair play.
There's even a dedicated competitor relations officer, Gillian Carr.
Gillian's there to help the competitors, make sure they're doing okay, address any concerns they might have. It's good to know someone's looking out for them in such a demanding environment.
And on top of that, the regulations have penalties for unsporting behavior, interference, failing to report accidents.
Yeah.
It really underscores that this rally, it's about respect for your fellow competitors as much as it is about individual achievement.
It's this fascinating blend of meticulous rules and a spirit of camaraderie.
So we've got strict rules, grueling conditions, and a strong emphasis on sportsmanship. This is shaping up to be one heck of an adventure.
And there are a few intriguing little details in these regulations that hint at just how unpredictable this rally can be.
Like the rule about leaving the prescribed route. A driver is allowed a 200-meter deviation.
Right, 200 meters. But what if you go further?
What happens then?
Now that's a question for part 2. So about that 200-meter deviation rule, makes you wonder what happens if a driver gets really lost. It's like a mini adventure right in the middle of the race.
Oh, totally. Talk about a test of improvisation skills. You got to think on your feet out there.
And speaking of tests, the regulations also mention this thing called post-event scrutineering.
Oh, yeah.
Can you imagine the pressure? The winners have to get their engines inspected.
Make sure everyone's playing fair. No funny business going on under the hood. It's not over till it's over, right? And while we're on the topic of cars, let's dive into which ones are actually allowed in this rally.
Right, because it's not just any old car that can handle this kind of beating. We're talking about classics here, so there must be some specific rules about what can and can't compete. Absolutely. So the main category is all about cars built before. Let me see, December 31st, 1985. Picture those iconic rally cars from the 60s, 70s, and early 80s.
Cool, the golden age of rally.
And the document even links to this FIA historic database.
Mm-hmm.
So you can actually see all the homologated cars from different periods.
Awesome. That's a great resource for anyone who wants to get really nerdy about classic rally car history. But it sounds like the regulations are designed to encourage a real variety of cars, not just the most famous models.
That's right. It's more about choosing the right tool for the job, a car that can take the punishment. And they even have different classes based on engine capacity. So you'll see everything from those nimble little 1600cc cars all the way up to the beasts with over 3000cc.
A real mix.
Now, I did notice something interesting. Four-wheel drive, turbochargers, superchargers, all those things are not allowed in the main category. Why is that?
It's all about keeping that classic rally spirit alive. Those technologies weren't as common back in those days, so the regulations aim for a more level playing field, driver skill above all else. So it's a test of finesse and experience, not just brute horsepower. But wait, there's an invitational category that allows for some of those more modern technologies, right?
You got it. That one's for cars built up to 1990, including those with forced induction and four-wheel drive. It's a separate competition, but it definitely adds another dimension to the event, like a battle of the generations.
Classic rally cars going head-to-head with their more modern descendants. What a spectacle. But now, for something you might not expect to find in a rule book for a rugged rally, environmental responsibility.
Yeah, for real. The regulations are super strict about littering. Teams have to collect and dispose of all their waste properly. Otherwise, penalties.
Wow, that's great. They're not just tearing through these landscapes, they're actively protecting them.
Right, and it's more than just littering, too. Remember those mandatory ground sheets we talked about earlier? Got to have those at all service points to prevent spills and leaks. Can't contaminate the ground.
It's awesome to see that attention to detail, even in the middle of this crazy competition. It's a good reminder that even when we're pushing the limits, we should always try to leave a positive impact. Now, let's get back to the drivers. There is this one rule that really jumped out at me. No pace notes allowed.
Whoa, really? Pace notes are like the co-driver's Bible. Those detailed instructions they use to navigate the stages.
Yeah, but nope, strictly forbidden. In this rally, drivers got to rely on their own instincts, their ability to read the terrain, anticipate what's coming next. A true test of skill.
Wow. No room for error when you're flying through unfamiliar territory at those speeds. And just to be extra sure, the regulations allow for random searches. Cars, luggage, the whole 9 yards. No sneaking in those pace notes.
The penalties for that kind of thing are no joke, up to and including disqualification. They take fair play seriously here. It's all about keeping that classic rally spirit alive. And of course, with all that rugged terrain and those high speeds, safety's got to be top of mind.
Absolutely. The regulations go into a ton of detail about all the safety measures for both the cars and the drivers. FIA-approved helmets, head restraints, fire extinguishers, first aid kits. They've thought of everything.
They even have a rule about using horns to warn stray animals on the stages.
Right. Talk about a unique hazard.
You don't see that in your typical rally rule book. It's a good reminder that they're racing through a wild and unpredictable environment.
And for an extra layer of safety, all the cars have to have this tracking system with an OK button and an SOS button, so the officials can keep an eye on everyone and respond quickly if there's an emergency.
That's reassuring. Even though the drivers are pushing their limits out there, they're never truly on their own. There's a whole team making sure things run smoothly and safely.
It's a massive operation, but those regulations make it clear that safety is paramount. They've covered all their bases to make this rally as safe as it is exciting. And speaking of exciting, they even address image rights.
Yeah.
Got to make sure they can capture and share the spectacle with all the fans around the world.
Right. We all get to experience the thrill of the East African Safari Classic Rally, even if we're not actually there. It's amazing to see how all these detailed regulations come together to create this unforgettable experience for the drivers, the teams, the fans, everyone.
It's a true testament to the power of passion, skill, and a love for adventure.
Well said. There's so much more to uncover about what makes this rally so special. Okay, so let's get into the actual structure of the rally itself. We know it's 2,200 kilometers of competitive stages, but it's not just one long, continuous race, right?
Nope, not at all. It's broken down into these legs, almost like chapters in this epic adventure story, and each one comes with its own unique set of challenges. And the regulations even get into how the starting order for each leg is determined.
Interesting. So it's not like they just line up in the same order every day.
Definitely not. The start list for each leg is based on the classification order from the day before. So whoever wins day one gets to be first off the line on day two. That's a whole new level of strategy to the game.
I bet there's a real advantage to staying ahead of the pack.
Oh, for sure. And to mix things up a bit, the organizers can also reseed retired competitors based on their, anticipated performance. So even if you have a bit of a setback, you still have a chance to fight your way back up the leaderboard.
I like that. It keeps everyone on their toes. So, we've talked about the competitive stages where the real action happens, but what about the sections in between, the bits that connect everything together?
Those are the road sections. They get the drivers from one stage to the next. But even on those raid sections, there are time controls to keep everyone on schedule.
So those penalties for early or late check-ins we talked about earlier really come into play here.
You bet. Precision is key, even when they're not actually racing. It's a mental marathon, just as much as a physical one.
Now, what happens if, and I know it's a big if, in a rally, this demanding a driver has to miss a stage or retire from the whole thing? The regulations must have something to say about that.
Oh yeah, they definitely address that. Drivers are allowed to miss stages, but they get time penalties. And if you have to retire from a stage, you can actually restart the next day. Again, with penalties, of course.
So it's not game over if you hit a snag. You can still keep fighting?
That's the spirit. But there's a little catch. Those who miss stages or retire are unlikely to end up higher in the classification than those who complete every single stage.
So consistency and perseverance are key. It's not just about raw speed. It's about knowing when to push and when to play it safe.
Exactly. Weighing the risks and the rewards, it's all part of the game.
You know, beyond all the rules and regulations and penalties, what really shines through is the pure sense of adventure that's at the heart of the East African Safari Classic Rally.
Absolutely. It's not just about winning. It's about pushing your limits, embracing the challenge,
Yeah.
and the camaraderie, the thrill of racing through these incredible landscapes.
The regulations might set the boundaries, but it's the drivers and their teams who bring the whole thing to life. Their passion, their skill, their determination, it's inspiring.
It takes a special kind of person to take on a rally like this. Someone who thrives on challenge, loves the unexpected, and has that, unyielding spirit of adventure.
Well said. It's been a blast breaking down the East African Safari Classic Rally with you. I hope our listener is feeling pumped and ready to tackle this incredible challenge.
Me too. Good luck out there.
And to everyone listening, thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time, keep exploring.